The twin suns of Zithra Prime shone brightly over the royal palace, casting long silver shadows across the marble halls. It was the day of the Great Mind Tournament, a contest held once every 10 years to test the intelligence and strategy of the galaxy's brightest beings. Among the competitors stood Princess Leora Valen, daughter of the Zithran Empress, known across the stars for her quick mind and prideful heart. Leora was not only the most brilliant strategist of her age, but also the most confident. She had defeated admirals, traitors, and even warlords in games of strategy. To her, the idea of losing was unthinkable. Her people believed that Zithrans, with their crystalline minds and ancient knowledge, were unmatched by any other race. Especially humans, those simple, emotional creatures from the small blue planet called Earth. But today, fate had a strange plan for her. The grand hall buzzed with energy. Dozens of alien delegates from every corner of the galaxy filled the chamber, their voices echoing off the high ceilings. Floating hollow screens displayed the faces of the competitors. On one side, Leora stood tall in her silver royal uniform, her pale blue skin glimmering under the lights. On the other side, a human man stepped forward, Captain Ethan Ryland, a representative of the United Earth Alliance. Whispers filled the crowd. A human? What business does a human have in a Zithran contest? Surely he cannot match the princess. Ethan didn't seem bothered. His calm eyes scanned the chamber, and a faint smile touched his lips. He looked ordinary compared to the glowing, elegant Zithrans, his hair brown, his build strong but not imposing. Yet there was something about the way he carried himself that caught Leora's attention. He stood straight, confident but not arrogant. When the rules of the tournament were read aloud, one particular detail made everyone pause. This year, to make the games more thrilling, a royal wager had been added. Whoever lost would face a consequence chosen by the winner, or if the loser was royal, the punishment would be chosen by a representative of another species. Leora laughed lightly when she heard it. To her it was a formality. Let them make whatever rules they wish, she told her advisor. I do not lose. The match began. It was a battle of intellect and nerve, played on a hollow board that projected entire civilizations in miniature. Each player commanded fleets, managed resources, and negotiated alliances in real time. The audience watched in awe as the two moved their hands across glowing panels, altering the course of simulated empires. For hours, the room was silent except for the soft hum of the hologrid. Leora's strategies were sharp and ruthless. She anticipated her opponent's every move, cutting off his supply routes and trapping his forces. She could see the humans' fleets collapsing, their colonies falling. She was already imagining her victory speech, but then something changed. Ethan smiled, just once, a quiet, knowing smile. Then he spoke softly. You're focusing too much on control, Princess. You've forgotten what makes a civilization truly strong. Before Leora could reply, the hollow board shifted. Ethan had made a bold move, risking everything on a single action that no Zithran strategist would ever consider. He sacrificed half of his fleets to save a small colony she thought meaningless. The audience gasped. The move seemed foolish, but then one by one, his surviving colonies began to rise up in defiance, combining their forces, sharing resources, and launching a counterattack that no algorithm could predict. Leora's eyes widened. Her carefully crafted empire began to crumble. Within minutes, Ethan's unpredictable human-style strategy, built on hope, cooperation, and creativity, overwhelmed her flawless but rigid logic. The final light on her side of the board faded. The hollow board went dark. Silence filled the hall. When the announcement came, it was almost surreal. Victory to Captain Ethan Ryland of Earth. Leora stood frozen. She had never lost before. Never. The weight of disbelief pressed against her chest. Around her, murmurs rose, some shocked, others amused. A Zithran princess defeated by a human? Impossible, yet undeniable. Ethan stepped forward and offered a polite bow. It was an honor, Princess, he said calmly. Leora clenched her jaw. You used chaos as your weapon, she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. No true strategist would risk everything on uncertainty. He met her gaze. Sometimes, Princess, chaos is just another name for courage. The words lingered in the air. Later that evening, Leora stood before the High Council of Zithra. The Empress herself, regal and calm, listened as the judges explained the tournament's rule. The royal wager must be honored. Because Leora had lost, the punishment would be chosen not by Zitherans, but by a delegate from another species. And since Ethan was the winning opponent, the right was his. Leora expected humiliation. Maybe he would demand political favors, or access to Zitharan technology. Humans were always curious about alien science, but Ethan seemed hesitant, even uncomfortable with the attention. "Captain," the Empress said, her voice echoing in the hall. "As the victor, the choice is yours. What punishment shall the princess face?" Ethan looked at Leora. She stood tall, proud even in defeat. Her silver eyes glowed with silent defiance. He could tell she was angry, not at him but at herself. He sighed. "I don't believe in punishment," he said at last. "But a wager must be honored, so I will choose something symbolic." The Empress raised an eyebrow. "Speak." Ethan took a deep breath. "Princess Leora will, by the ancient law of honor, enter into a union with me." Gasps filled the hall. The counselors exchanged shocked glances. A Zitharan royal marrying a human? It was unheard of. Leora's face froze in disbelief. "You cannot be serious," she said coldly.
"Marriage is not a punishment, it's an agreement," Ethan interrupted gently.
"A bridge between our worlds. If we must turn a loss into something meaningful, let it be this." The Empress studied him closely. Humans were emotional, but this one spoke with sincerity and respect. After a long pause, she nodded. "So it shall be. The law demands a consequence, and the victor has spoken. The princess will fulfill the royal wager." Leora's composure cracked for the first time. "Mother, this cannot stand." "The law stands above all," the Empress replied quietly. "Perhaps this lesson will teach you more than any victory ever could." The chamber was silent. Ethan bowed once more and left the room, leaving Leora standing in shock as hundreds of alien eyes watched her. That night, in her private chamber, Leora stared at the twin moons through the crystal window. Her mind burned with questions. How could this have happened? How had a human, an ordinary human, outsmarted her? She could not understand his thinking. His strategy had no pattern, no logic, and yet it worked. Somewhere deep inside her frustration, she felt something else, a faint flicker of curiosity. Humans were unpredictable, strange, and unlike any race she had studied. Maybe that unpredictability was their true power. Still, the thought of being married to one felt like a cruel joke of destiny. Meanwhile, aboard the human starship Dauntless, Captain Ethan Ryland sat alone staring out at the stars. He didn't want to embarrass the princess or her people, but he had seen something in her during the match, something that could change the way the galaxy viewed humans forever. Perhaps this strange union could lead to understanding. Perhaps it could unite two worlds that had always kept their distance. The two stars of Zithara glowed on the horizon, one silver, one gold. Two very different lights shining together, and so began a story that neither of them could have imagined. A story of pride, honor, and the unpredictable power of the human spirit. The day after the tournament, the grand palace of Zithara Prime felt heavier than usual. The crystal halls that once sparkled with pride now carried whispers of disbelief. Everywhere Princess Leora went, eyes followed her. She was no longer the undefeated prodigy of Zithara. She was the princess who lost to a human. As she entered the council chamber, even her advisors avoided her gaze. She could feel their judgment pressing against her shoulders like invisible weight. The air hummed with soft voices until the Empress raised her hand. "Silence," she commanded. Her voice, calm and regal, filled the room. "The royal wager has been decided. It must be fulfilled. Princess Leora will be joined in symbolic union with Captain Ethan Ryland of Earth." Leora stood stiffly beside her mother's throne. Her heart pounded, though her face showed only cold control. "Mother," she said softly, "I will accept the law, but this punishment will bring shame to our people." The Empress's eyes softened. "Sometimes shame is the first lesson of wisdom, my daughter." Leora looked away. She wanted to protest further, but the laws of Zithara were older than the stars themselves. A royal could not escape a wager's consequence. Not even a princess. Across the room, Ethan Ryland entered with calm steps. He wore a dark formal uniform of the United Earth Alliance, its silver emblem glinting under the light. He looked out of place among the tall, luminous Zitharans, and yet somehow his presence drew respect. There was quiet strength in the way he held himself, like a man who didn't need to prove anything. He bowed before the Empress. "Your Majesty," he said respectfully, "I understand the tradition of your people. I only ask that this union be peaceful and honorable. I do not wish to cause harm." The Empress nodded. "You show humility, Captain. That is rare among conquerors." "I'm no conqueror," Ethan replied with a faint smile. "Humans have enough problems of their own. I'd rather build bridges than walls." Leora's lips tightened. "A fine speech," she said coolly. "You sound as if you're the victim in this situation." Ethan met her eyes gently. "No one here is a victim, Princess. Just two people caught in the web of old traditions." Her glare softened for only a second before she turned away. "Let us get this over with." The ceremony by Zitharan custom, the union was more ceremonial than personal. It represented alliance, not affection. The event took place in the Hall of Starlight, under a dome made of transparent crystal that showed the twin suns above. Hundreds of guests attended, leaders, diplomats, and the curious elite of many worlds. The atmosphere was electric with gossip. Hollow cameras from across the galaxy floated silently, recording the historic moment when an alien princess would bind her fate to a human. Leora wore a gown of silver threads woven with faint light, symbolizing intellect and honor. Ethan wore his black and blue dress uniform, his medals polished but his expression calm and thoughtful. As they stood side by side on the glowing platform, an elder priest of Zethara stepped forward. "By law and light," the priest declared, "we join two beings of distant stars in the spirit of unity. Let their bond remind us that even across galaxies, honor binds all souls." Ethan and Leora exchanged vows, short, formal, and emotionless. When the ceremony ended, polite applause echoed through the chamber, though the whispers that followed were far louder. The journey begins after the ceremony. The Empress called her daughter to the royal balcony. Below them, the capital stretched like a sea of glowing towers. "You will accompany Captain Ryland on his return to the Human Alliance," she said. Leora's eyes widened. "What? You are sending me away?" "It is necessary," the Empress replied. "The galaxy watches us now. If this union is to mean something, you must live it. You will learn about humans, their culture, their strength, their flaws. And perhaps they will learn from you." Leora wanted to argue, but she knew it was hopeless. Once her mother made a decision, it was final. "Very well," she said bitterly. "I will play this role, but I will not bow to them." Her mother smiled faintly. "I wouldn't expect you to." Later, aboard the dauntless Ethan's starship, Leora stepped onto human metal for the first time. The corridors felt small and confined compared to the open architecture of Zithara. The humans greeted her with cautious respect. They had never hosted a Zitharan royal before. "Welcome aboard, Princess," Ethan said, offering a polite gesture toward the observation deck. "We'll depart in 2 hours for Earth Central Council Station. You'll have private quarters during the journey." "I would expect nothing less," she said sharply, walking past him. But as she glanced around, she couldn't hide her curiosity. Everything was so practical. No gold, no glowing walls, no floating lights, just metal and technology built for survival. Humans were a strange race. They had so little compared to Zitharans, yet they managed to reach the stars. Two worlds collide. During the journey, Leora kept mostly to herself. She spent hours staring at the stars from her cabin window, wondering how her life had changed so quickly. Pride burned in her heart, but beneath it was confusion. Ethan's strange kindness unsettled her. He didn't act victorious or arrogant. He didn't even treat her like someone beneath him. He was patient. One evening, Ethan knocked softly on her door. "Princess, may I come in?" She sighed. "If you must." He entered, carrying a tray of tea. "Our cook thought you might like this." "It's from Earth, chamomile." "I don't need human drinks," she said coldly. He placed it on the table anyway. "Then consider it a peace offering. I think we'll be traveling together long enough that we might as well not hate each other." Leora stared at him, unsure how to respond. "You believe I hate you?" He smiled faintly. "No, I think you hate the situation. I just happen to be part of it." That made her pause. She looked at him, really looked at him. For the first time, his eyes were steady, filled with something she rarely saw among nobles. Sincerity. "I still don't understand why you chose this punishment," she said quietly. "You could have asked for anything. Power, technology, even an alliance. Why this?" Ethan thought for a moment. Because your people see humans as weak. If I had demanded power, it would only prove you right. But if I chose something peaceful, something that forced us to understand each other, then maybe it could change that belief. Leora blinked. She hadn't expected such an answer. You think a marriage can change an entire galaxy? Maybe not, Ethan admitted. But every change starts with two people willing to try. For a long moment, neither spoke. The hum of the ship filled the silence. Leora didn't know what to say, so she simply turned away. But inside, something small shifted. A crack in the wall she had built around her pride. A test in Space A few days later, as the Dauntless passed near an asteroid belt, alarms blared through the ship. The captain's voice echoed over the intercom. Pirate vessels detected. Multiple signatures closing fast. Leora rushed to the control deck, her silver gown replaced with a fitted combat uniform. Ethan was already there, giving orders to his crew. Shields up! Ready defensive turrets. She watched the humans move quickly, organized, efficient, but visibly tense. How many ships? She asked. 5. Light-class raiders, Ethan replied. They're fast but fragile. Leora stepped closer to the holomap. Your formation is wrong. You're leaving your flank open. Ethan glanced at her. You have a better idea? Yes. She began adjusting the holographic icons. Pull your ships into a crescent pattern. Draw them in, then collapse the wings. It's a hunting tactic my people used during the border wars. He hesitated, then nodded. Do it. Moments later, the battle began. Laser fire flashed across the blackness of space. The Dauntless moved gracefully through the asteroid field, following Leora's strategy. When the pirates fell for the bait and rushed forward, the human ships closed in from both sides, trapping them completely. Within minutes, the enemy vessels were disabled. The crew erupted in cheers. Ethan turned to Leora with a genuine smile. Remind me never to doubt a Zitharan princess. Leora allowed herself a small smile, her first since the wager. You would be wise not to. For the first time, they both laughed. That night, as the ship drifted peacefully under the light of distant stars, Ethan stood on the observation deck, watching the glittering sky. Leora joined him silently. You humans are reckless, she said softly. Yet, somehow it works for you, he smiled. And you Zitharans are proud. But maybe pride has its strength too. They stood together in silence, the distance between them slowly beginning to fade. Not through force, but through understanding. Far away, the twin suns of Zithara burned in the darkness, a reminder that even when two worlds collide, something new can begin to shine. The Dauntless drifted quietly through the deep black of space. Its engines hummed like a soft heartbeat as it sailed between distant stars. Days had passed since the pirate attack, and the tension between Princess Leora and Captain Ethan Ryland had begun to change. They were no longer just two unwilling partners bound by law. They were survivors who had faced danger side by side. Something fragile yet real had begun to grow between them. Respect. Still, neither of them fully understood what that meant. Life on the dauntless life aboard a human starship was very different from the shining halls of Zithara. There were no floating lights or crystal gardens, no servants or luxury. Everything was functional. Steel walls, narrow corridors, and the faint smell of metal and fuel. Yet despite the plainness, there was warmth. People greeted each other by name. They worked, laughed, and trusted one another. Leora often walked through the corridors quietly, observing. Humans fascinated her. They were emotional, clumsy at times, and driven by feelings more than logic. But their teamwork amazed her. Every person, no matter how small their role, was valued. One day, she stopped by the engineering bay and watched a group of mechanics repairing a power relay. Sparks flew as one of them wiped sweat from his brow. Almost there, he said cheerfully, not noticing her. You risk injury for such a small task, she said, curious. The man looked up in surprise, realizing who she was. Oh, Princess. It's not a risk, ma'am. It's just what we do. The ship runs because every bolt, every wire, every hand matters. Leora tilted her head. Every hand matters, she repeated softly. Her people rarely thought that way. On Zithara, hierarchy ruled everything. But here humans believed strength came from working together. Later that day, she found Ethan in the command room studying star charts. Your crew is different, she said slowly. They act without orders sometimes. Yet they all seem connected. Ethan smiled. That's how humans work. We don't need perfect control. We just need trust. She crossed her arms. Trust is dangerous. It can be broken. True, he said, but without it, we'd never leave our home planet. We'd never reach the stars, Leora didn't answer. She looked out the window at the swirling nebula ahead. For the first time, she began to wonder if the human way, messy and uncertain as it was, might hold a kind of wisdom her people had long forgotten. The distress signal on the 7th day of their journey. The Dauntless picked up a distress signal. It came from a small mining colony on the edge of Sector Karan 12, near a cluster of unstable asteroids. The voice on the transmission was desperate. This is Colony Asteron. We've lost power and are under attack by raiders. We need help. Anyone, please respond. Ethan turned to his crew. Set course for Asteron. Maximum speed. The navigator hesitated. Sir, the colony's outside our route. It'll delay the journey by 2 days. Ethan's voice was firm. If we ignore them, people die. We're going, Leora frowned. You would risk your mission for strangers? Yes, Ethan said simply. Because one day it could be us calling for help. The Dauntless jumped through hyperspace and reached the colony within hours. Through the viewport, they saw a dusty planet surrounded by wreckage. Smoke rose from burning structures. Several pirate ships orbited above, still firing on the surface. Shields up, Ethan ordered. Prepare landing teams. Princess, I could use your help. My help? She asked, surprised. You're a strategist. We'll need a plan. Battle on Asteron. The Dauntless descended through the smoky atmosphere, landing near the colony's edge. As the ramp lowered, the crew moved out in armor, carrying pulse rifles. Leora followed, wearing a light combat suit that shimmered faintly. Ethan turned to her. The pirates have a command base near the mining field. If we disable their power source, the rest will scatter. Leora scanned the terrain through a holo display. Their ships rely on a shared energy link. If we overload it, they'll lose control. I can create a feedback loop using your ship's transmitter. Ethan grinned. Do it. Together, they led a small team through the ruined colony. Smoke filled the air, and frightened colonists hid in damaged shelters. The pirates were armed and dangerous, but Leora's plan worked perfectly. She rerouted their energy network, causing their ships to short-circuit one by one. Explosions lit the sky. The raiders panicked, retreating toward space. The humans cheered. Ethan placed his hand on Leora's shoulder. Nice work, Princess. You saved a lot of lives today. Leora stared at the smoke rising above the colony. We both did. For the first time, her voice carried warmth. After the battle, once the danger was over, Leora walked through the colony's broken streets. Children peeked out from behind metal crates, curious about the glowing-skinned alien princess who had helped them. One little girl ran up, holding a small flower made of crystal dust. This is for you, the child said shyly. Leora blinked. For me? You helped my mom. Thank you. Leora took the flower gently, unsure what to say. No one had ever thanked her like that before. On Zithera, she was obeyed, respected, even feared, but not thanked. That simple gesture touched something deep inside her. Humans, she thought, were strange in the most beautiful way. New understanding. That evening, the colony's survivors shared a meal with the crew of the Dauntless. Leora sat beside Ethan around a makeshift fire under the open sky. The stars above were bright and endless. You could have left, she said quietly. You could have ignored their call. Ethan nodded. Maybe. But what kind of humans would we be if we turned away? Leora looked down at the glowing crystal flower in her hand. My people would have called it inefficient. Wasting time on others gains nothing. Maybe not in numbers, Ethan replied. But it gains something far more important. Trust. She turned to him. You truly believe trust can change the galaxy? He smiled. I believe it already has. For a long moment they sat in silence. Leora found herself studying the lines of his face, the calm confidence in his eyes. He wasn't powerful like the warriors of her world. He didn't command fear, but he inspired courage, and that, she realized, was a kind of strength she had never known. An unexpected bond. When the Dauntless prepared to leave the next morning, the colonists gathered to say goodbye. Leora stood beside Ethan as the leader of the colony approached. Captain Rylan, the man said, shaking his hand. We owe you our lives. And you, Princess. Thank you for showing us that not all nobles stay distant from the stars. Leora inclined her head politely. It was our duty. As they boarded the ship, Ethan glanced at her with a faint smile. You know, for someone who didn't want to be here, you made quite the hero. Leora looked at him, her expression serious but soft. Do not mistake necessity for kindness, Captain, he chuckled. Of course not, Your Highness. But when she turned away, a small smile played at the corner of her lips. The journey continues. As the Dauntless left Asteron's orbit, the crew celebrated their success. But for Leora, the experience left her thoughtful. The things she had seen, the courage, the unity, the gratitude, had changed how she viewed humans. Back in her cabin, she replayed the battle recordings on her holoscreen. She watched Ethan's commands, his calmness under pressure, his way of inspiring everyone around him. There was no arrogance, no hunger for glory, just purpose. For the first time, Leora wondered if her loss in the Great Wager wasn't a punishment at all, but a path she was meant to walk. She stepped onto the observation deck, where Ethan was once again standing alone. Staring into the stars, Captain, she said softly. Your people are remarkable. He turned, surprised. Thank you, Princess. Coming from you, that means a lot. She hesitated before speaking again. Perhaps there is more for me to learn from you than I thought. Ethan smiled gently. And maybe there's more for me to learn from you. They stood together in silence as the stars drifted by. Two figures from different worlds bound by chance, destiny, and something quietly growing between them, something that neither could yet name. The Dauntless glided through the blue mist of a nebula, its engines glowing softly in the darkness. The journey back to the Zithran capital was nearing its end, but the space between Princess Leora and Captain Ethan Ryland no longer felt filled with anger or distance. What had begun as a forced union now felt like something different, something delicate, uncertain and real. Still, neither dared to speak of it aloud. The return to Zithra. When the Dauntless finally entered Zithran space, the skies shimmered with the light of twin suns. The capital planet looked magnificent, floating cities of crystal and energy, rivers of silver light and spires that touched the stars. But beneath that beauty waited tension. The news of Leora's marriage to a human had spread across the galaxy, and not all welcomed it. Many noble houses of Zithra whispered that the royal bloodline had been tainted by an outsider. As the Dauntless landed on the palace platform, crowds gathered. Some cheered, others stared in silence. Leora walked beside Ethan, her face calm but her heart uneasy. When they entered the throne hall, the Empress awaited them, sitting on her radiant crystal throne. Her eyes softened at the sight of her daughter but hardened as she saw the humans behind her. Welcome home, my daughter, the Empress said. You have returned with honor, I hope. Leora bowed respectfully. Yes, Mother. The human vessel served with courage. They saved an entire colony from raiders. The Empress nodded slowly. And you, Captain Ryland, she said, turning to Ethan, have you found the lesson behind your victory? Ethan met her gaze calmly. I learned that pride and fear are not so different. But when two sides choose to trust instead of fear, they can build something new. The Empress studied him in silence, then gave a faint smile. Wise words for a human. But not all will see it that way. The council divided later that day. The Grand Council of Zythera convened. Representatives from across the Empire gathered under a dome of stars. Ethan stood beside Leora as nobles began to speak. This union is an insult to our kind, one said. A human cannot share the royal blood, another added. They are impulsive and primitive, a third voice snapped. Leora clenched her fists, but before she could speak, Ethan stepped forward. I understand your anger, he said, his voice steady. But I never wanted to take anything from you. The princess and I were bound by your laws, not by desire for power. Yet in this journey, I've seen the greatness of Zythera, and I believe your people can see greatness in humanity, too, the council murmured. His tone was humble but strong. One elder stood up, frowning. Words are wind, Captain. Why should we believe humans can match our wisdom? Ethan hesitated. Because humans learn. We fail, we adapt, and we keep trying. That's what makes us strong. Leora looked at him quietly. His simple words carried truth. She had once thought humans weak, but now she understood. They were strong in ways her people could not measure. When the debate ended, the Empress rose. The council will deliberate, she said. Until then, you both are to remain within the palace grounds. Tension and reflection days passed. The palace glittered as always, but beneath the beauty, whispers and politics grew louder. Some nobles plotted to overturn the union. Others wanted to use it as a symbol of unity. Leora spent her time walking the crystal gardens. The glowing trees swayed softly as wind flowed through them. Ethan found her there one evening, sitting by a silver pond. "You seem troubled," he said gently. She didn't look up. "My people are divided because of me. They think I've brought shame to the crown." Ethan sat beside her. "You didn't bring shame. You brought change. Change is never easy." She turned toward him, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dusk. "You speak of change as if it's a gift. For my people, it's a threat. They fear losing what makes them powerful." "Maybe," Ethan said, "but sometimes letting go of power is the only way to find peace." Leora's gaze softened. "You speak as if you've seen it happen before." "I have," he said quietly. "On Earth, history is full of wars born from pride. Every time we almost destroyed ourselves, it was because no one wanted to admit they were wrong. But the moments we grew stronger were the ones when we chose forgiveness." Leora was silent for a long time. Then she said softly, "You think my people can learn that?" Ethan smiled faintly. "If their princess can, then yes, they can." A sudden threat that night, the palace alarms blared. A crimson glow lit up the sky as explosions echoed from the outer defense towers. The communications officer rushed in. "Your Majesty, enemy ships are attacking from orbit. It's the Drax Dominion. They've broken through the border." The Empress stood. "Prepare the planetary shields." But the Drax fleet was strong. Dozens of dark warships firing plasma bolts that shattered the outer barriers. Panic spread across the capital as the royal guards scrambled. Ethan ran to the command center with Leora following close behind. "We need to coordinate the defense," he shouted. Leora accessed the tactical map. "Their ships are cloaked. They're using stealth generators. We can't hit what we can't see." Ethan's mind raced. "Then we make them reveal themselves. If we overload the magnetic layer of the atmosphere, it'll disrupt their cloaks." The Scytheran general frowned. "That's impossible. It would damage our own ships." Ethan met his gaze. "Not if we synchronize the pulse through your planetary core's energy grid. I can link it from your relay tower." Leora's eyes widened. "That's risky," he smiled. "You said trust is dangerous. Let's take that risk." The battle for Scythera, they rushed to the control tower. Outside, the sky was filled with streaks of fire as enemy ships broke through the clouds. The city below was chaos. People fleeing, alarms echoing through the shining streets. Leora worked at the energy console, her fingers flying across glowing panels. "Power link engaged." Ethan climbed to the upper deck, connecting human tech to Scytheran systems. "Starting pulse countdown 5 seconds. The ground trembled as the energy core charged. Blue lightning arced across the atmosphere, lighting the whole sky. Then with a thunderous roar, a massive pulse erupted, washing across the planet like a tidal wave of light. One by one, the enemy ships flickered into view. Their stealth failed. Scytheran defense cannons opened fire, destroying them in bursts of flame and debris. The sky cleared. Cheers echoed from every corner of the capital. Leora looked at Ethan, breathless. "You did it," he smiled. "We did it." A shift in hearts. When the smoke cleared, the council called an emergency meeting. The Empress stood before her people. "The human captain has saved our world," she declared. "He fought not as an enemy, but as one of us," the crowd murmured in agreement. Even the nobles who once doubted the Union now bowed their heads in respect. Ethan bowed before the Empress. "I only did what anyone should, Your Majesty." But the Empress shook her head. "No, you did what many would not. You risked yourself for those who once rejected you. That is the strength of humanity, and it is something we must learn." She turned to her daughter. "And you, Leora, you have shown wisdom beyond your years. You trusted where others feared." Leora felt emotion rise in her chest, but she spoke calmly. "Perhaps I am finally learning what it means to lead." The Empress smiled. "Then the galaxy has a future worth believing in." The quiet moment later that night after the celebration, Leora and Ethan stood together on the palace balcony. The twin moons glowed above them, silver and gold. "You know," Ethan said softly, "when I came here, I never thought I'd be standing beside a princess on an alien world." Leora smiled gently. "And when I met you, I never thought a human could teach me anything." They both laughed quietly. After a pause, she looked at him seriously. Ethan, my people respect you now. You could ask for anything. Wealth, command, even a seat on the council. What will you ask for? He looked up at the stars. Nothing. I just want peace between our worlds. That's enough. Leora studied his face, the honesty in his eyes, the kindness that never faded even under pressure. She felt a warmth she couldn't describe. You are strange, Captain, she said softly, but perhaps. Strange is what this galaxy needs. He smiled. Then I'll take that as a compliment. The sun rose over Zithara's crystal horizon, painting the floating cities in shades of gold and silver. The great capital, once filled with fear and division, now shimmered with hope. The people of Zithara had seen something impossible, a human and an alien royal working side by side to defend their world. Peace had returned, but in its calm, both Princess Leora and Captain Ethan Ryland knew that the real challenge had only begun. A galaxy in debate, the Grand Council had gathered again, this time not for judgment, but for a decision that would shape the future of both species. The circular chamber glowed with light, thousands of leaders watching from every world through holographic screens. The Empress stood tall at the center. Her voice echoed through the hall. Zithara was saved not by power or fear, but by cooperation. Yet we must now decide, will we continue to live apart or will we begin something new with humanity? The council chamber filled with whispers. Some still doubted. Some feared what might come. Princess Leora stepped forward. Her royal cloak shimmered with blue light. My people, she began, her voice calm but strong. I once believed humans were weak. I believed they could never understand our ways. But I was wrong. Her words drew silence. Even the counselors who once hated the Union now listened. Leora continued. Ethan Ryland fought for our world when he had no reason to. He risked his life for a planet that was not his own. That is not weakness, and that is courage. And if courage can be found in the heart of a human, then perhaps we have much to learn from them. She turned slightly, looking at Ethan, who stood behind her. The law bound us together, but now I choose to stand beside him by my own will. A wave of surprise rippled through the chamber. Some gasped, others smiled. Ethan took a deep breath, stepping forward to speak. Your Highnesses, I didn't come here to take anything from your people. But if our marriage can mean peace, if it can show that humans and Zitharans can work together, then I'll give everything I have to that cause. The Empress rose, her eyes shining with pride. Then let it be written, she said solemnly, that the bond between our worlds will not be a punishment, but a promise. And for the first time in Zitharan history, the entire chamber stood and bowed, not in fear, but in respect. A festival of light days later, the capital prepared for the Festival of Unity, a celebration never seen before. The floating streets were filled with banners and glowing crystals. Holographic displays showed images of both Earth and Zithara side by side. Leora stood before her mirror in her royal chamber. Her attendants adjusted her ceremonial armor, polished silver plates mixed with strands of blue silk. She looked regal, but her mind was elsewhere. There was a knock at the door. Come in, she said softly. Ethan entered, wearing a formal dark blue uniform with Zitharan markings along the collar, a symbol of his honorary citizenship. He looked unsure, almost shy. You look... He paused, searching for the right word. Like a queen who could command the stars. Leora smiled faintly. And you look like someone who still doesn't know how to accept a compliment. He laughed quietly. Maybe, but I'm learning. There was a comfortable silence between them, the kind that needed no words. Finally she spoke. I never imagined this would happen. Not the war, not the peace, not this, Ethan nodded. Neither did I. But maybe the best things in life are the ones we don't plan. She looked at him thoughtfully. Do you regret it? Being forced into this? He shook his head. Not anymore. If I hadn't met you, I'd still believe that aliens and humans could never truly understand each other. Leora's eyes softened. And now, he smiled, now I know they can. The ceremony as the festival began, music filled the air, an ethereal blend of human instruments and Zitharan harmonics. The royal courtyard sparkled beneath the twin suns. Thousands of guests watched from across the galaxy as the Empress stood before the couple. Princess Leora, she said, you entered this union through law, but now I ask, do you choose it of your own heart? Leora looked at Ethan. For a moment, memories flashed through her mind. The wager, the anger, the long journey, the battles, the fear, and finally, the respect that had turned into something deeper. Yes, she said clearly. I choose it. The Empress turned to Ethan. Captain Ryland of Earth, do you accept this bond not as punishment but as unity between our worlds? Ethan met her gaze. With all my heart, Your Majesty. The Empress raised her hands. Then let it be known. From this day forward, humanity and Zythera are united by trust and courage. The crowd erupted in cheers. Light beams shot into the sky, painting the stars with glowing patterns. The air shimmered with fireworks that formed the symbol of two worlds joined as one. After the celebration later, when the music quieted and the guests departed, Leora and Ethan walked through the royal gardens. The silver trees glowed softly around them, and small crystal birds sang from the branches. Leora looked up at the night sky. Do you think this peace will last? She asked. Ethan thought for a moment. Peace is like fire, he said. You have to keep feeding it or it fades. But if enough people believe in it, it can burn for generations. She smiled. You sound like a philosopher. Maybe I just sound hopeful, he replied. They stopped beside a pond where the water reflected the stars. For a moment, they stood in silence, the wind whispering softly around them. Do you miss Earth? She asked quietly. Sometimes, he admitted. The oceans, the smell of rain. But then I look around here and I think maybe I was meant to be here and to help build something new. Leora turned to him. Then we'll build it together. A new alliance weeks later, the first human Zytheran Alliance Center was established in the capital. Scientists, explorers, and diplomats from both species began working together on projects that could change the galaxy. New ships, energy systems, and communication links. Ethan was chosen as the first ambassador between Earth and Zythera, while Leora was crowned as co-regent, ruling beside her mother and representing the new generation of leadership. The galaxy watched as history was rewritten. Old enemies began to open their borders. Trade and friendship grew where there had once been suspicion. And though the alliance was young, its foundation was strong, built not by treaties or fear, but by understanding. Epilogue. The Star Garden months later, Leora and Ethan visited a small observatory high above the city, the same place where they had once argued about destiny and duty. Now it had been turned into a star garden, filled with plants that glowed like constellations. Leora walked beside him, her royal duties finished for the day. She looked peaceful, her crown resting lightly on her head. Do you remember? Ethan said softly. When you told me humans were reckless and foolish? Leora smiled. Yes, and you told me Zytherans were arrogant and cold. He laughed. I think we were both right, a little. But also wrong, she said. He looked at her. Do you think we'll ever stop being so different? She met his eyes and shook her head gently. No, but maybe that's what makes us perfect partners. Where I am strong, you are gentle. Where you hesitate, I act. Together we make something better than either alone. Ethan nodded, feeling her words settle in his heart like truth. Then maybe that's what love really is. Leora blinked in surprise. For a moment she didn't speak. Then a warm smile touched her lips. Perhaps it is. They stood together, watching as a comet streaked across the sky, a glowing trail of silver and blue light. The stars reflected in their eyes, two different souls sharing one vision of the future. And somewhere deep in the heart of the galaxy, the story of the alien princess and the human captain became more than legend. It became a symbol of what humanity could be at its best. Brave, kind, and capable of changing even the coldest of worlds through compassion.